when Emma Rosewood discovers her fiancé is cheating 30 minutes before their wedding. She flees to a dimly lit bar, where one impulsive kiss with a mysterious stranger changes everything.
Hey, what she doesn't know.
He's Sebastian Knight, the billionaire CEO, whose company she's about to work for as his new executive assistant. *, welcome back, beautiful people. This story is where drama meets devotion, and where one glance can rewrite destiny. *, the bourbon burned like truth as Emma Rosewood pressed her lips to the stranger's mouth in the dimly lit corner of the Golden Hour bar. She tasted whiskey and desperation on his tongue, felt the sharp intake of his breath as her wedding dress lay crumpled in a hotel room 15 blocks away. This morning she had been a bride. Tonight she was a woman who kissed mysterious men. In shadowed booths while jazz music bled through expensive speakers, and her mascara painted black rivers down her cheeks. Sebastian Knight's hand found the curve of her jaw, his thumb tracing the salt tracks of tears that had dried hours ago. The kiss deepened with the reckless hunger of two people who had nothing left to lose. Emma's fingers tangled in his dark hair, pulling him closer, as if proximity could erase the image of Oliver's hands in her cousin's red curls. Their bodies pressed against the hotel garden wall like lovers in a fever dream. When they finally broke apart, the air between them crackled with electricity and unspoken confessions. Sebastian's gray eyes searched her face in the amber glow of table lamps. Seeing something raw and real that called to the hollow spaces in his chest, Emma had told him everything over the past 2 hours. How she'd found her fiancé betraying her 30 minutes before their ceremony. How she'd fled in jeans and a sweater, leaving 150 guests and a lifetime of careful plans behind. How she felt like a fool for believing in fairy tales. What she didn't know was that Sebastian Knight owned half the buildings visible through the bar's rain-streaked windows. That his latest business acquisition had closed that afternoon for $2.1 billion. That he'd escaped to this particular sanctuary because it was one of the few places in the city where billionaires could drink, without paparazzi lurking behind potted plants. "I should go," Emma whispered. But her body remained perfectly still. Their faces inches apart in the intimate bubble they'd created. "Should and want are different words," Sebastian replied, his voice rough with alcohol and something deeper. "What do you want, Emma?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Emma stared into his eyes and saw her own recklessness reflected back, magnified by expensive liquor and the strange courage that comes from having your world destroyed before lunch. She wanted to forget Oliver's betrayal. She wanted to feel alive instead of hollow. She wanted this stranger who listened to her secrets without judgment and made her laugh when she thought she'd never smile again. "I want to disappear," she said finally. "Just for tonight, I want to be someone else entirely." Sebastian nodded slowly, understanding passing between them like a shared secret. He stood and extended his hand, and when Emma took it, she felt the calluses on his palms that spoke of work despite his expensive suit. They walked through the bar's heavy glass doors into the Seattle night, where autumn rain fell in silver sheets and city lights reflected off wet pavement like scattered diamonds. His penthouse apartment occupied the top 3 floors of a building that pierced the clouds. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, where ferries moved like ghosts through the darkness. Emma stood in the center of his living room, taking in the minimalist furniture and abstract art that probably cost more than her annual salary, while Sebastian poured them both glasses of wine that tasted like liquid velvet. "Tell me something true," Emma said, settling beside him on a leather couch that faced the windows. The wine was making her bold, stripping away the careful politeness that had governed her relationship with Oliver. "Not your name or your job or where you went to college. Something that matters." Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "I built something extraordinary, and it turned me into someone I don't recognize. Success is supposed to feel like victory, but most days it feels like a prison sentence." "What did you build?" "An empire that everyone wants to be part of and no one wants to see fall." He looked at her then, and Emma saw loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. "What about you? What's something true that has nothing to do with runaway brides or cheating fiancés?" Emma considered the question, surprised by how difficult it was to answer. "I've spent so long being what other people needed that I'm not sure who I actually am underneath it all. The good daughter, supportive girlfriend, the perfect employee. I'm 28 years old, and I feel like I'm meeting myself for the first time." They talked until the rain stopped, and dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere between confessions and shared silences, Emma found herself curled against Sebastian's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. She hadn't meant to fall asleep, but exhaustion and emotional overload had pulled her under like a tide. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee brewing in what she assumed was an impossibly expensive kitchen. Sebastian stood at the counter, his back to her, wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous than his tailored suit had. When he turned and caught her watching, his smile was soft and unguarded in the morning light. "Coffee?" he asked, and Emma nodded, suddenly aware that she was wearing his shirt from the night before and nothing else. They sat at his kitchen island, sharing comfortable silence and strong coffee, while the city woke up below them. Emma knew she should leave. She should go home, face the aftermath of her canceled wedding, figure out how to rebuild a life that had imploded in the space of a photograph. But something about this moment felt suspended in time, precious and fragile as spun glass. "I have a confession," Sebastian said eventually, his voice careful. "Last night wasn't entirely coincidental." Emma's coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. "What do you mean?" "I knew who you were." "Emma Rosewood, marketing director at Hartfield Communications. You handled the publicity campaign for my company's latest product launch." The words hit Emma like cold water. She set down her mug with shaking hands, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed, clicking into place. "You knew. When you approached me at the bar, you already knew. I knew your name and your professional reputation. I didn't know you'd just run from your wedding. I didn't know you'd be the most genuine person I'd met in years." Sebastian reached for her hand, but Emma pulled away. "I didn't plan what happened between us." Emma stood abruptly, Sebastian's shirt falling to her thighs. "This is exactly what I was trying to escape. The manipulation, the lies, the feeling that nothing is real." "Emma, wait." But she was already moving, gathering her clothes from where they'd been discarded the night before. The fairy tale was over, and reality was a harsh, unforgiving light that revealed all the cracks in what she'd thought was something beautiful. "My driver will take you wherever you need to go," Sebastian said quietly as Emma dressed with quick, angry movements. "I'll find my own way." She paused at his front door, looking back at him one last time. He stood in his kitchen like a statue carved from regret, and for a moment Emma almost relented. Almost stayed. Almost believed that something real could grow from such complicated soil. Instead, she left without another word, taking the elevator down 43 floors to street level, where ordinary people lived ordinary lives and billionaires didn't masquerade as mysterious strangers in upscale bars. What Emma didn't see was Sebastian's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter, a text message from his assistant that would change everything. "Miss Rosewood's interview is confirmed for Monday morning. Position is hers, if she wants it. The position that would make her his new executive assistant. The position that would put her in his life every single day." Emma walked into the Seattle morning, thinking she was walking away from Sebastian Knight forever, not knowing that fate had other plans entirely. Emma stood in the gleaming lobby of Knight Industries, her hands steady despite the hurricane in her chest. The marble floors reflected the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the receptionist's smile was professionally warm as she handed over a visitor's badge. Executive assistant to Sebastian Knight? The interview she'd scheduled 3 weeks ago, back when she'd been a different person entirely? Back when she'd been planning a wedding, instead of running from the wreckage of her old life? She hadn't known. When Hartfield Communications had arranged the interview, Sebastian Knight had been nothing more than a name on her calendar. A stepping stone to better opportunities, higher salary, a chance to rebuild after Oliver's betrayal had burned her world to ash. The irony tasted bitter as Monday morning coffee. The elevator climbed 43 floors in silence, and Emma watched the city shrink below her through glass walls. She wore her most professional navy suit, her hair twisted into a severe bun, armor against whatever game fate was playing. Her reflection stared back from the polished doors, composed and competent. No trace of the woman who had kissed a stranger. In a dimly lit bar 3 days ago, the doors opened to reveal an office that belonged in architectural magazines. Clean lines, expensive materials, art that probably cost more than most people's homes. And there, standing behind a desk that could have doubled as a runway, was Sebastian Knight in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped off the pages of a business magazine. Their eyes met across the space, and Emma saw her own shock, reflected in his gray gaze. He recovered first, his expression smoothing into professional neutrality, but she caught the slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he was as blindsided as she was. "Miss Rosewood," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Please have a seat." Emma remained standing. "This is a mistake. I should go." "Should and want are different words," Sebastian replied, and the echo of his words from Saturday night hung between them like a challenge. "What do you want, Emma?" The question cut deeper this time, loaded with history and the memory of his mouth on hers. Emma wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to pretend Saturday night had never happened. And she wanted to relive every moment. Instead, she sat down in the chair across from his desk and folded her hands in her lap. "I want the job," she said simply. "If you're offering it." Sebastian studied her for a long moment, and Emma had the unsettling feeling that he could see, straight through her professional facade to the chaos underneath. "The position requires complete discretion. You'd have access to information that could destroy careers, topple companies, change the direction of entire industries. When you handle that level of responsibility, I've been handling other people's secrets my entire career. The only difference now is the stakes. What about personal complications? Working this closely together might be difficult given our history." Emma met his gaze directly. "We don't have a history, Mr. Knight. We had one evening of poor judgment fueled by alcohol and emotional distress. It's not history. That's a mistake we're both mature enough to move past." Something flickered in Sebastian's eyeshirt, maybe. Or disappointment, his expression remained professionally neutral. "Very well. The job is yours, Miss Rosewood. We'll start fresh. Clean slate." But clean slates were impossible when every glance across the office carried the weight of confessions shared in darkness. When the sound of his voice saying her name brought back the taste of bourbon and the feeling of his hands in her hair, Emma threw herself into the work with fierce determination, managing Sebastian's impossible schedule, fielding calls from senators and CEOs, coordinating meetings that moved millions of dollars with a single signature. She was good at it. Better than good. Within 2 weeks, she had streamlined his entire operation, anticipated his needs before he voiced them, became the invisible force that made his empire run smoother. Sebastian watched her work with something that might have been admiration. If Emma allowed herself to imagine such things, they maintained perfect professional distance during business hours. Sir and Miss Rosewood. Never Sebastian and Emma. But sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And sometimes their hands brushed when she handed him documents, sending electricity up her arm like a live wire. The first crack in their carefully constructed walls came on a Thursday evening when Seattle's autumn rain drummed against the windows like impatient fingers. Emma was still at her desk at 9 p.m., reviewing contracts for Sebastian's next acquisition, when she heard glass shatter from his office. She found him standing amid the pieces of what had once been an expensive crystal decanter, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and there was something wild and dangerous in his eyes that made Emma's breath catch. "Mr. Knight?" she said carefully. "Are you injured?" Sebastian looked at her, as if he'd forgotten she was there, as if he'd forgotten where he was entirely. "They want to buy my company," he said, his voice hollow. "Kellerman Industries. They've made an offer that my board considers too good to refuse." Emma had heard whispers about Kellerman Industries. Old money, older methods, the kind of corporation that chewed up innovation and spat out conformity. "What does that mean?" "It means everything I built gets dismantled and sold for parts. Every job I created gets eliminated for efficiency. Every breakthrough my teams achieved gets buried in red tape and focus groups." Sebastian looked at the broken glass at his feet. "It means I become exactly what my father always said I'd become. A disappointment with expensive tastes." The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Emma's chest. Without thinking, she moved closer, careful to avoid the glass shards. What does your father have to do with this? Marcus Knight. You've probably heard the name. Real estate empire. Old Seattle. Money, the kind of man who measures success in generational wealth and social connections. Sebastian's laugh was bitter. He cut me off when I dropped out of Harvard to start my company. Said I was throwing away everything he'd worked to build. I swore I'd prove him wrong, and you did. Knight Industries is worth billions. Borrowed time, apparently. The board meets tomorrow to vote on the Kellerman offer. I need 8 votes to block the sale. I have 7. Emma found herself reaching for him before she caught herself, her hand stopping just short of his arm. There. Has to be something you can do. Some way to fight this. Sebastian's eyes met hers, and in that moment, the professional distance between them evaporated like morning mist. He was no longer her boss, and she was no longer his assistant. They were just 2 people standing in a room full of broken glass and shattered dreams. There is one option, he said quietly. But it would require a level of trust I'm not sure I have the right to ask for. What kind of option? Sebastian moved to his desk, pulling out a file thick with legal documents. Marriage clause buried in my company's original incorporation. Papers. Something my lawyer added as a joke when I was 22 and convinced I'd never settle down. If I marry before my 35th birthday, control of the company transfers to me personally rather than remaining with the board. Emma's blood turned to ice water. You're 34. My birthday is in 6 weeks. Sebastian, I know how it sounds. I know what I'm asking. But Emma, I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands what's at stake. Someone who won't try to take advantage of the situation or use it to control me. His voice dropped too barely above a whisper. Someone who kissed me in a bar and meant it. The proposal hung between them like a live grenade. Emma stared at him, seeing not the billionaire CEO, but the lonely man who'd shared his secrets in the darkness, who'd held her while she grieved the death of her fairy tale dreams. This is insane, she said finally. We barely know each other. We know the things that matter. We know each other's damage. We know how it feels to have everything we thought we wanted ripped away without warning. Sebastian stepped closer, close enough that Emma could smell his cologne and see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. 6 months, that's all I'm asking. 6 months of marriage to save my company, and then we file for divorce and go back to our separate lives. And what happens to me when this is over? When the tabloids find out about our arrangement? When my name becomes synonymous with gold digging and corporate manipulation? I'll make sure you're protected. Financially, professionally, personally. You'll never have to worry about money again, and I'll provide references that will get you any job you want. Emma closed her eyes, trying to think clearly through the chaos in her head. 6 months ago, she'd been planning a wedding to a man who'd betrayed her. Now another man was proposing marriage as a business arrangement, and the terrible truth was that it made more sense than anything else in her life. What about the board meeting tomorrow? If you say yes, I'll announce our engagement. The vote becomes irrelevant. Emma opened her eyes to find Sebastian watching her with an intensity that made her skin burn. And if I say no, then tomorrow, Kellerman Industries owns everything I've spent the last decade building, and you'll be looking for a new job by Friday. The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of rain against glass and the weight of impossible choices. Emma thought about Oliver, about the life she'd planned that had crumbled in a hotel garden. She thought about starting over, about taking control of her own story for once instead of letting other people write it for her. I have conditions, she said finally. Sebastian's face didn't change, but she saw hope flicker in his eyes. Name them. Name them. No one can know it's fake. Not your board, not the media, not even your closest friends. If we do this, we do it completely. Agreed. Want legal protection? Contracts that guarantee my financial security and professional reputation regardless of how this ends. Done. And Sebastian stepped closer. Close enough to see her reflection in his eyes. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever manipulate me or use me or treat me like a pawn in your corporate games, I will destroy you. I will take everything you've built and watch it burn. Do you understand? Sebastian's smile was sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous. I understand perfectly, Miss Rosewood. Then you have your 6-month wife, Mr. Knight. He reached for her then, his hand cupping her face just as it had in the bar, and Emma found herself leaning into the touch, despite every rational thought screaming warnings in her head. Emma, he said softly, and her name on his lips sounded like a promise and a threat all at once. Before she could respond, before she could change her mind or remember all the reasons this was insane, Sebastian's phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the moment like a knife, and he stepped away to answer it, his expression immediately shifting back to business mode. "Knight," he said into the phone, and Emma watched his face go carefully blank. "I see. When did this happen?" Emma couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but she saw Sebastian's grip tighten on the phone, saw his knuckles go white with tension. "How much do they know?" Pause. "I understand. Yes, I'll handle it." He hung up and looked at Emma, with an expression that made her stomach drop. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "That was my head of security. Someone leaked information about tomorrow's board meeting to the press. The story breaks in 3 hours." Sebastian's voice was deadly calm. Along with photos of us together from Saturday night, Emma felt the world tilt sideways. "What? Someone was watching us, Emma. Someone photographed us at the bar at my apartment building. The headlines are already written." Paused, letting the implications sink in. Billionaire's secret affair days before corporate takeover, and Knight Industries CEO's mystery woman, who is Emma Rosewood. The carefully constructed walls Emma had built around Saturday night came crashing down. In 3 hours, the entire world would know about their night together. Her name would be splashed across gossip sites and business blogs. Her privacy, her anonymity, her chance at a normal life, all of it gone. Who would do this? She asked, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew there was only one person, with both the motivation and access to information about her private life: Emma. Sebastian was watching her with concern. "What are you thinking, Oliver?" she whispered. "My ex-fiancé. He works in media relations for Kellerman Industries." The war room at Knight Industries hummed with controlled chaos at 2 a.m. Sebastian's entire crisis management team had been called in. Laptops open, phones constantly buzzing, the Seattle skyline glittering beyond the windows like scattered stars. Emma sat at the conference table feeling like she was watching her life become a corporate strategy session, complete with damage assessments and contingency plans. "The photos are everywhere," reported Jennifer Park, Sebastian's head of communications. Her voice crisped despite the late hour. Business Insider, Forbes, Entertainment Tonight, TMZ. The narrative is already forming. Mysterious woman, secret affair, corporate scandal. Emma stared at the tablet. Jennifer slid across the table. The photos were surprisingly intimate despite being taken from a distance. Her and Sebastian at the golden hour, faces close in conversation, walking to his car in the rain, standing at his apartment windows at dawn. Someone had been watching, waiting, documenting every moment of what she'd thought was a private breakdown. "Oliver Hayes," Sebastian said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Emma's ex-fiancé. He works for Kellerman Industries." "Jennifer, what do we know about him?" Jennifer's fingers flew across her laptop. "Oliver Hayes, 31, Senior Communications. Specialist at Kellerman for 3 years. Clean record, solid reputation, recently called off engagement to one Emma Rosewood." The wedding was supposed to be last Saturday. The room fell silent. Emma felt every pair of eyes turned toward her, the weight of their judgment and curiosity settling on her shoulders like a heavy coat. She straightened her spine, meeting their gazes directly. "He cheated on me with my cousin 30 minutes before our wedding ceremony," she said clearly. "I found out, called off the wedding, and ended up at the golden hour. That's where I met Sebastian." "Jesus," muttered Marcus Chin, Sebastian's legal counsel. "This is a soap opera." Sebastian's voice was deadly quiet. "Oliver orchestrated this. The timing isn't coincidental. He leaked information about our board meeting and followed Emma, Saturday night, waited for the perfect moment to destroy both of us." "But why?" Jennifer asked. "What does he gain from this?" Emma closed her eyes, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't wanted to see clicking into place. "Revenge. I humiliated him by running out on our wedding. His family, his friends, his co-workers, all knew he'd been left at the altar. And if Kellerman successfully acquires Knight Industries, Oliver's career gets a massive boost. 2 birds, 1 stone, Sebastian said grimly. Destroy my reputation to help the takeover succeed, and punish Emma for leaving him. The conference room door opened, and Rebecca Shaw, Sebastian's personal assistant before Emma, entered with a silver coffee service that probably cost more than most people's rent. Emma had met Rebecca briefly during her first week, a polished blonde with sharp eyes and a smile that never reached them. She'd been surprisingly cold during the handover, making snide comments about Emma's inexperience with Sebastian's particular needs. I thought you might need caffeine, Rebecca said sweetly, setting down the tray. Her eyes lingered on Emma with what looked like satisfaction. This must be so overwhelming for you, Emma. Having your private life exposed like this. Something in Rebecca's tone made Emma's skin crawl. But before she could respond, Sebastian's phone rang. He answered it with a sharp Knight, listened for 30 seconds, then hung up with a curse that would have made sailors blush. The board moved up their meeting. Emergency session in 4 hours. They want to vote on the Kellerman offer before market opens, while our stock is in free fall from the scandal. Jennifer pulled up Knight Industries' stock price on the main screen. The numbers were brutal. Down 18% in after-hours trading. With financial commentators already speculating about leadership instability and personal scandals affecting business judgment. We're out of time, Marcus said grimly. Even if we announce the engagement now, it looks reactive. It's like damage control instead of a genuine relationship. Sebastian stood abruptly, moving to the windows that offered a panoramic view of Seattle's sleeping cityscape. Emma watched the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Everything he'd built was crumbling because of her, because of one impulsive kiss in a dimly lit bar. There's one option, she said quietly, and the room turned toward her. We don't just announce the engagement, we get married tonight. Before the board meeting. The silence was deafening. Emma, Sebastian said carefully, we discussed 6 months. A gradual that was before Oliver turned my personal breakdown into front-page news. That was before your company's stock price became collateral damage. Emma stood, facing the room full of corporate sharks and power players. If we're doing this, we do it completely. No half measures, no testing the waters. We get married tonight, and when the board meets in 4 hours, you're not just announcing an engagement. You're announcing that you've already triggered the marriage clause. Rebecca's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Emma replied, not taking her eyes off Sebastian. It's the only move Oliver won't see coming. He's expecting damage control and spin. He's not expecting us to double down. Sebastian studied her face for a long moment, and Emma wondered if he could see the fear beneath her determined exterior. She was proposing to marry a man she'd known for 2 weeks, in a ceremony designed to outmaneuver corporate raiders and vengeful ex-fiancés. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was absolutely terrifying. Judge Harrison, Sebastian said finally, turning to Marcus. Can you reach him? Marcus was already reaching for his phone. He owes me a favor from the Meridian case. I can have him here within the hour. Jennifer, I need a complete media strategy. Something that frames this as a love story instead of a business transaction? On it. Rebecca, Sebastian paused, looking at his former assistant. Actually, Rebecca, you can go home. This doesn't concern you anymore. Rebecca's perfectly composed mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly and bitter beneath. Of course, Sebastian. I'm sure Emma has everything under control. She left with barely controlled fury radiating from every step, and Emma made a mental note to watch her back around Rebecca Shaw. A woman scorned was dangerous enough. A woman scorned with access to corporate secrets was a weapon waiting to detonate. Within an hour, Judge Harrison arrived, looking appropriately judicial despite being roused from sleep. Marcus had worked miracles with the marriage license, calling in favors and expediting paperwork with the efficiency of someone who'd built a career on making impossible things happen. Emma stood in Sebastian's private bathroom, staring at her reflection in a mirror that probably cost more than her car. Jennifer had performed another miracle. producing a simple but elegant cream-colored dress that fit perfectly and managed to look bridal without being overwrought. Someone had even found flowers, white roses that smelled like expensive perfume and new beginnings. "You can still change your mind," Sebastian said from the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that had probably been tailored specifically for his broad shoulders and lean frame. "Can I?" Emma asked, turning to face him. "Because it feels like we're already past the point of no return. My name is on every gossip site in America. Your stock price is in freefall. Oliver is probably celebrating with champagne and caviar." Sebastian stepped closer, close enough that Emma could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of carrying an empire on his shoulders. "This isn't how I imagined getting married. How did you imagine it?" "I didn't," he admitted. "I never thought I'd find someone willing to see past the money and the power and the endless complications. Someone who'd choose me instead of what I could provide." Emma's heart clenched at the vulnerability in his voice. "Sebastian, I need you to understand something. This may have started as a business arrangement, but I'm not walking down this aisle for your company or your money or revenge against Oliver. I'm doing it because somewhere between that first kiss and this moment, I started caring about you, the real you. The man who listens to secrets without judgment and holds broken people until they feel whole again." Sebastian's hand came up too, cup her face, thumb tracing across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "Emma Rosewood, will you marry me? Not for business or revenge or corporate strategy, but because something real exists between us that's worth fighting for." "Yes," she whispered, and meant it more than she'd ever meant anything in her life. The ceremony was small and surreal, conducted in Sebastian's office with the Seattle skyline as backdrop and a handful of witnesses who'd signed ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Judge Harrison's voice was warm and official as he spoke about love and commitment and choosing to build a life together despite all odds. When Sebastian slipped the ring onto Emma's finger, a simple platinum band that somehow fit perfectly, she felt the weight of more than just jewelry. She was becoming Emma Knight, wife to one of the most powerful men in America. Partner in a marriage that had begun with deception and evolved into something neither of them fully understood. "You may kiss the bride," Judge Harrison said with a smile that suggested he'd married more than his share of couples. Under unusual circumstances, Sebastian's kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. Nothing like the desperate passion of that first night. This kiss spoke of possibilities and hope and the courage to believe in fairy tale endings even after being burned by them before. They were still kissing when Jennifer burst through the office doors, her face flushed with excitement and terror. In equal measure, "We have a problem," she announced, and Emma's blood turned to ice. The photographs from Saturday night weren't the only ones Oliver had. He just released a second wave of images to every major news outlet in the country. Thrust her tablet toward them, and Emma's world tilted sideways. The screen showed photos of her and Oliver together, obviously taken during their relationship. Intimate moments, romantic dinners, vacation pictures. But someone had manipulated them, altered the timestamps, made it look like they'd been taken. Recently, after Saturday night, after she'd met Sebastian. "The headline is already trending," Jennifer continued, her voice grim. "Billionaire's bride's secret double life. Emma Knight's affair with Kellerman Industries executive." Emma stared at the doctored photographs, watching her new marriage crumble before it had even begun. Oliver hadn't just wanted revenge. He'd wanted complete annihilation. "He's claiming the affair is ongoing," Jennifer said quietly. "That you've been feeding him inside information about Knight Industries? That this marriage is a setup designed to give Kellerman access to corporate secrets?" Sebastian's face had gone completely blank, his CEO mask sliding into place. When he looked at Emma, his eyes were cold as winter steel. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Sebastian, no. I would never answer the question, Emma. Are you working with Oliver Hayes?" The doubt in his eyes cut deeper than any blade. After everything they'd shared, every moment of vulnerability and connection, he could still look at her and see a potential enemy. Emma felt something fundamental break inside her chest, something that might never heal properly. "No," she said simply. I'm not working with Oliver. But I can see that part of you will always wonder, won't you? Part of you will always question whether I'm here for you or for what you can give me. Sebastian's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Emma pulled the wedding ring from her finger and set it on his desk. And we're already over, Sebastian. A marriage without trust is just a business arrangement, and I refuse to spend the next 6 months being treated like a corporate spy. She walked toward the door, her wedding dress rustling against her legs, feeling like she was leaving more than just a room. She was leaving behind the possibility of something real and beautiful and transformative. Emma, wait. She paused at the door, not turning around. What? The board meeting is in 2 hours.
Ow!
If you leave now, Kellerman wins. Everything I've built gets torn apart and sold for scrap. Emma looked back over her shoulder, seeing Sebastian standing amid the ruins of their impossible wedding, surrounded by the corporate machinery that had brought them together and was now tearing them apart. Then maybe you should have married someone you actually trust, she said softly, and walked out of his life, leaving him to face the wolves alone. Emma's apartment felt like a museum of her former life. Wedding gifts still stacked in corners, thank you cards half written on her kitchen counter, the ghost of dreams that had died twice in 2 weeks.
Ouch.
She sat on her couch in the wedding dress that had cost 3 months' salary, scrolling through news articles that dissected her life with surgical precision. The doctored photos looked convincing even to her own eyes. Oliver's digital manipulation seamlessly, blending past and present into a narrative of betrayal. Her phone had been ringing constantly since she'd left Knight Industries 3 hours ago. Reporters, friends, her mother crying about family shame and asking how Emma could have done this to poor Oliver. Each call felt like another nail in the coffin of her reputation, her career, her chance at any kind of normal future. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd run from one wedding to escape lies and manipulation, only to walk into another that had been destroyed by the same forces. The universe apparently had a twisted sense of humor. A soft knock at her door made Emma look up from her phone. She wasn't expecting anyone, and reporters had been camping outside her building since dawn. Through the peephole, she saw a familiar figure that made her heart stop. Rebecca Shaw stood in the hallway, looking perfectly put together despite the early hour, her blonde hair styled immaculately, and her smile sharp as a knife. "Hello, Emma," Rebecca said when the door opened. "May I come in? I think we need to talk." Every instinct screamed warning, but Emma was too exhausted to care about self-preservation. She stepped aside, letting Sebastian's former assistant into her sanctuary. Rebecca moved through the apartment with predatory grace, taking in the wedding gifts and abandoned thank you cards with obvious satisfaction. "Quite a mess you found yourself in," she said conversationally, "though I suppose you brought it on yourself." "If you're here to gloat, you can save your breath," Emma replied, sinking back onto her couch. "I already know I'm ruined. Actually, I'm here to offer you a way out." Rebecca perched on the edge of Emma's coffee table, close enough that her expensive perfume made the air feel thick and cloying. "You see, I know something about those photographs that might interest you." Emma's blood chilled. "What do you know?" Rebecca's smile widened, revealing perfectly white teeth that looked ready to devour. "I know they're fake, darling. It's expertly done, but fake nonetheless. I should know I helped create them." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. "You what? Oh, don't look so shocked. Do you really think Oliver orchestrated this entire thing? By himself? The man can barely manage his own schedule, let alone execute a complex corporate espionage operation." Rebecca stood, beginning to pace around Emma's living room like a cat circling wounded prey. He needed someone with insider access, someone who understood Sebastian's weaknesses and pressure points. "You've been working with Oliver this entire time, working for Kellerman Industries technically. Oliver was just my point of contact." Rebecca picked up a crystal vase from Emma's mantel, examining it with casual interest. They've been planning this takeover for months, but Sebastian kept finding ways to block them. They needed something to destabilize his leadership, create enough chaos to force a quick sale. Emma's mind raced, pieces of a conspiracy far larger than she'd imagined clicking into place. "The photographs from Saturday night, you arranged those?" "2. I've been having Sebastian followed for weeks, looking for anything compromising. When he disappeared Saturday evening and didn't come home, I knew something had happened. Finding you was just a bonus. Rebecca set down the vase with deliberate care. Though I admit I didn't expect him to actually marry you. That was a delicious surprise. Why are you telling me this? Emma asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Rebecca's expression turned calculating. Because I want something from you, and I'm willing to make a trade. The original, unaltered photos from your relationship with Oliver, plus signed affidavits admitting to the digital manipulation in exchange for a small favor. What kind of favor? Sebastian's personal files, financial records, business strategies, details about Knight Industries' upcoming projects. The kind of information that would be very valuable to Kellerman's integration team once they complete the acquisition. Emma stared at Rebecca, seeing the woman's true nature clearly for the first time. Beautiful, brilliant, and completely without conscience. You want me to betray Sebastian? I want you to be practical. His company is finished, Emma. The board voted an hour ago. Kellerman's acquisition went through unanimously? Sebastian Knight is no longer CEO of Knight Industries, and by extension, you're no longer his wife in any way that matters. Rebecca's voice was honey over poison. He doesn't trust you anyway. You saw it in his eyes when those photos came out. So why protect a man who is so quick to believe the worst about you? The truth of those words cut deep. Sebastian had looked at her with suspicion and doubt, ready to believe she was capable of corporate espionage and adultery. After everything they'd shared, he'd still seen her as a potential enemy. But even as the hurt threatened to overwhelm her, Emma remembered other moments. Sebastian's gentle hands on her face as he proposed. The vulnerability in his voice when he talked about his father's disappointment. The way he'd held her while she cried over Oliver's betrayal, offering comfort without asking for anything in return. No, Emma said quietly. Rebecca's mask of friendly persuasion slipped slightly. Excuse me? I said no. I won't betray Sebastian, and I won't help you destroy what's left of his company. Emma stood, feeling strength return to her spine. He may not trust me, but I know who he really is. He's a good man who built something extraordinary, and I won't be part of tearing it down. You're making a mistake, Emma. Without my help, those photographs will define you for the rest of your life. No reputable company will hire you. No decent man will want you. You'll be the woman who cheated on a billionaire, the gold digger who couldn't be satisfied with fairy tale wealth. Then that's what I'll be, Emma replied, surprised by her own calm. But I won't be someone who betrays the people she cares about for personal gain. Rebecca's friendly facade evaporated completely, revealing the cold ambition beneath. You stupid, naive little girl. You think Sebastian will thank you for your loyalty? You think he'll realize his mistake and come running back to apologize? He's already moved on, darling. He's probably in his office right now, planning his exit strategy and trying to salvage whatever pieces of his empire he can. The words were designed to wound, and they succeeded. But Emma had been wounded before, by Oliver's betrayal, by her parents' disappointment, by every person who'd ever made her feel like she wasn't enough. She'd survived all of it, and she'd survive this too. Get out of my apartment, Emma said. Firmly, Rebecca gathered her purse with theatrical dignity. This offer expires when I walk out that door. Last chance, Emma. Good. I was getting tired of looking at you anyway. Rebecca's exit was sharp and angry, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like gunshots, when the door slammed behind her. Emma collapsed back onto her couch, adrenaline leaving her system in a rush that made her hands shake. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Turn on channel 7. Now. Emma grabbed her remote, switching to the local news station just in time to see Sebastian standing behind a podium in what looked like the Knight Industries lobby. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his voice was steady as he addressed the cameras. Earlier today, Kellerman Industries successfully acquired controlling interest in Knight Industries through a hostile takeover made possible by a coordinated campaign of misinformation and corporate espionage. Sebastian's gray eyes looked directly into the camera. I want to be clear about something. My wife, Emma Knight, had nothing to do with this acquisition. She is not now, nor has she ever been, involved with Oliver Hayes or Kellerman Industries in any capacity. Emma's heart stopped. He was defending her publicly and unequivocally, despite everything that had happened between them. The photographs suggesting an affair between my wife and Mr. Hayes are digitally manipulated fabrications, created by individuals working on behalf of Kellerman Industries to destabilize my company's leadership. Sebastian paused, and Emma saw something that looked like regret flicker across his features. Emma Knight is a woman of extraordinary integrity who was targeted because of her association with me. She deserves better than to have her reputation destroyed by corporate politics and personal vendettas. The camera cut to a reporter asking about Sebastian's plans, but Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at her phone, scrolling through social media feeds that were already beginning to shift. Hashtag Team Emma was trending. Legal experts were discussing the implications of corporate espionage and digital manipulation. The narrative was changing, slowly but surely. Her phone rang, Sebastian's name on the screen. Emma stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello, Emma." His voice was rough, exhausted, and full of something that might have been hope. "Did you see the press conference?" "I saw it. Why?" "Because I owe you an apology that's approximately 3 hours overdue? Because I let fear make me stupid, and I'm hoping you're willing to forgive me for being an idiot?" Sebastian paused. "Because I have something to tell you about Rebecca Shaw that you need to hear." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the last pieces of the puzzle sliding into place. "She was here, Sebastian. She confessed everything. She offered to clear my name in exchange for corporate secrets." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her to go to hell." Sebastian's laugh was surprised and warm. "That's my girl. Can you come back to the office? There's something I need to show you, something that explains everything." "Sebastian, the board already voted. Kellerman owns your company now." "Actually," Sebastian said, and Emma could hear the smile in his voice. "That's where things get interesting. It turns out Rebecca Shaw made one crucial mistake in her espionage career. She recorded everything, including her conversations with Kellerman Industries, and Marcus found them." Emma's heart began to race. "What does that mean?" "It means we have evidence of corporate espionage, stock manipulation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. It means Kellerman's acquisition was obtained through illegal means, which makes it null and void." Sebastian's voice grew serious. "But more importantly, it means you were right to trust me when I couldn't trust myself. Come home, Emma. Please, let me spend the rest of my life making up for the worst 3 hours." "Of yours?" Emma looked around her apartment, at the remnants of her old life and the possibility of something new. Home. Sebastian was calling his penthouse home, as if she belonged there, as if they were building something together that was worth fighting. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said, already reaching for her keys. "Emma, I love you." I should have said it hours ago, but I was too scared of losing you to admit how much you mean to me. The words hit Emma like sunshine after rain, warm and bright and full of promise. "I love you too, Sebastian. Now let's go save your company." As Emma walked out of her apartment and toward her future, she didn't see Rebecca Shaw sitting in a black sedan across the street, her face twisted with rage as she spoke into her phone. "The plan failed," Rebecca said coldly. "Emma Knight refused to cooperate, and they have the recordings. We need to move to phase 2 immediately." The voice on the other end was calm and measured. "Understood. Proceed with the alternative. Rebecca, make sure there are no survivors this time. This has gone on long enough." Emma's hands trembled as she drove through downtown Seattle, Sebastian's words echoing in her mind. "I love you." 3 words that changed everything and nothing all at once. Because love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability in their world was a weapon waiting to be used. The city lights blurred through her windshield as rain began to fall, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon. She was 3 blocks from Knight Industries when the explosion lit up the night sky. The shockwave shattered her car windows, sending glass fragments across her face like deadly confetti. Emma slammed on her brakes, watching in horror as flames engulfed the upper floors of the building where she'd worked, where she'd fallen in love, where Sebastian was supposed to be waiting for her. Her phone rang through the chaos, Marcus Chen's name on the shattered screen. She answered with bloody fingers, her voice barely a whisper. "Emma, thank God. Are you hurt?" Marcus's words came fast and panicked. I'm fine. Sebastian, he's alive. We got him out through the parking garage just before the blast. But Emma, this wasn't an accident. Someone planted explosives. On the 40th floor, timed to detonate during our meeting with the FBI, Marcus's voice was grim. Rebecca Shaw and her Kellerman contacts knew we had the evidence. This was their way of eliminating both the recordings and the witnesses. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of how close they'd come to losing everything. Where is he now? Safe house. I'm sending you the address. Emma, be careful. These people have already tried to kill us once tonight. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in Capitol Hill, the kind of place where billionaire CEOs and their wives definitely didn't belong. Emma found Sebastian on the balcony, staring out at the Seattle skyline with bandages on his hands, and smoke still clinging to his clothes. When he heard her footsteps, he turned, and the relief in his eyes was so profound it took her breath away. Emma. Her name was a prayer on his lips as he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly. She could feel his heart racing against her chest. I thought I'd lost you. When I saw your car near the building, I'm here, she whispered into his neck. I'm alive. We're both alive. Sebastian pulled back to look at her face, his thumb gently tracing the small cuts from the broken windshield. I'm sorry. For doubting you. For not trusting what I knew in my heart to be true. Rebecca played us perfectly, but that's no excuse for Emma silenced him with a kiss. Soft and desperate, and full of everything they'd almost lost. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. We can talk about trust and forgiveness. Later, she said. Right now, I need you to tell me how we're going to destroy the people who tried to kill us. Sebastian's smile was sharp as broken glass. Marcus recovered backup copies of all Rebecca's recordings before the explosion. We have enough evidence to bring down not just Rebecca and Oliver, but the entire Kellerman conspiracy. But Emma, they're not going to go quietly. They've already tried murder. What comes next will be worse. Let them come, Emma replied, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of letting other people write my story. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Over the next 48 hours, Emma learned that love wasn't just about shared secrets and stolen kisses and dimly lit bars. It was also about standing together when the world tried to tear you apart, about trusting your partner to watch your back when enemies came from every direction. The FBI raids were swift and devastating. Rebecca Shaw was arrested at SeaTac Airport. With a suitcase full of cash and a fake passport, Oliver Hayes was taken from his Kellerman Industries office in handcuffs, his face pale with the knowledge that corporate espionage carried a 20-year prison sentence. The executives who'd orchestrated the hostile takeover found their assets frozen and their reputations destroyed. Emma stood beside Sebastian as he addressed the media from the steps of the federal courthouse. No longer the broken runaway bride or the uncertain assistant, but a partner in every sense of the word. Love story, Sebastian's answer was simple. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. Emma saved me from becoming someone I didn't recognize, and I hope I did the same for her. Knight Industries emerged from the chaos stronger than before, its hostile takeover declared illegal, and its stock price soaring on the news of the conspiracy's exposure. Sebastian's board offered him a formal apology and a new contract with unprecedented control over the company's direction. But the victory felt hollow until the morning Emma woke up in Sebastian's penthouse and found him standing at the kitchen island with coffee and an expression that made her heart skip. I have something for you, he said, producing a small velvet box that definitely hadn't come from a jewelry store. I know we're already married, technically, but that ceremony was about corporate strategy and survival. This is about something else entirely. Emma opened the box to find a simple gold band. Engraved with coordinates, she looked at Sebastian questioningly. The exact location where you kissed me for the first time, he explained, his voice soft. The golden hour, table 12, the moment my life actually began. He dropped to one knee in his ridiculously expensive kitchen, still wearing pajama pants and bedhead. Emma Knight, will you marry me again? Not for business or revenge or corporate maneuvering, but because I can't imagine a future that doesn't have you in it. Emma's answer was yes, before he'd finished the question, and their second wedding was everything the first had not been. Small and intimate, held in the penthouse garden with Seattle, spread out below them like a glittering promise. Emma wore a simple white dress that she'd chosen herself, and Sebastian's vows made her cry in the best possible way. "You taught me that fairy tales aren't about perfect people living perfect lives," he said, his hand steady as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "They're about imperfect people choosing to love each other through all the chaos and complications. In corporate conspiracies life throws at them." Judge Harrison, who'd agreed to officiate their second ceremony with considerably more enthusiasm than their first, pronounced them husband and wife with a smile that suggested he'd never married a couple quite like them before. Their kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise, the kind of kiss that spoke of morning coffee and shared secrets and growing old together despite all the forces that had tried to keep them apart. 6 months later, Emma stood in the same golden hour booth where their story had begun, watching Sebastian charm a table full of potential investors with his vision for the future of artificial intelligence. She'd quit her assistant position to start her own consulting firm, specializing in crisis communications for companies targeted by hostile takeovers. The work was challenging and rewarding. It felt good to help other people survive the kind of corporate warfare they'd endured. Sebastian caught her eye across the bar and winked. It's the same devastating smile that had first caught her attention, and she was a broken bride, drowning her sorrows in expensive whiskey. Now she was Emma Knight, entrepreneur and wife, partner, to a man who'd learned to trust as fiercely as he loved. Oliver Hayes had been sentenced to 15 years for corporate espionage and conspiracy. Rebecca Shaw got 25 years for attempted murder and racketeering. The Kellerman executives were still fighting their charges, but Emma no longer cared about their fate. They'd become footnotes in someone else's story, no longer the central figures in her nightmares. Sometimes Emma wondered what would have happened if she'd never found those photographs of Oliver with her cousin. She'd walked down the aisle that Saturday afternoon and married a man who'd been betraying her all along. Would she have lived her entire life settling for less than she deserved, convinced that lukewarm love was better than no love at all? But those were thoughts for other people in parallel universes. In this universe, Emma Knight had learned that fairy tales weren't about finding perfection. They were about finding someone worth fighting for, someone who saw your scars and loved you not despite them, but because of them. As Sebastian finished his presentation and made his way back to her table, Emma smiled at the beautiful irony of it all. She'd run from one wedding and stumbled into the greatest love story of her life. She'd been betrayed by a fiancé and found a husband. She'd lost everything she thought she wanted and discovered everything she actually needed. "To go home, Mrs. Knight?" Sebastian asked, extending his hand with the same gesture he'd made in this very bar almost a year ago.
Always,
Emma replied, taking his hand and letting him lead her into whatever came next. Outside, Seattle glittered in the darkness, full of stories waiting to be written and lives waiting to be transformed by unexpected encounters in dimly lit bars. Emma and Sebastian walked through it all together. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the best fairy tales began with the worst days, that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, it was about finding someone perfect for you. If you love billionaire romance stories, subscribe for more emotional romance content. Comment your favorite part of Emma and Sebastian's story. The end.